Rand.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Gimme Red podcast. First off, Happy New Year's to everybody. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you've been enjoying the holidays. Today, we're going to talk about Stranger Things, finale. I think this is something that's all over the internet. It has to be discussed. We saw it in theaters. I really am mixed on how I feel about this finale. Like, I'm happy the way it ended. I think it's very safe. But the season overall, I want to say is underwhelming, and I feel like expectations were met, but also very disappointed with especially volume two.
It's definitely a mixed bag. I think keyword that you just said, safe, is definitely kind of what I was feeling, especially during the first half of the finale, because the way that they handled the actual core threat, I thought was a little, yeah, definitely safe. However, the epilogue at the end of this episode, I think, really brought Stranger Things back to like its core messaging and what the show has always been about, which honestly got me pretty emotional. I really thought where they left every character off was actually a really good emotional send off, and it became clear to me, and especially in this season, they weren't really killing any of these characters.
Yeah,
Like
and I
they
agree with
they
you.
were, the plot armor was crazy, but even so, I kind of just started excusing it because it's kind of true to 80s movies anyway, where all the main characters are just like immortal and like untouchable. So it's just that with like 15 plus characters. So,
A
you
hundred
know.
100%. But I definitely want to talk about, there's a lot of, if we got focus on the finale, what we just saw in theaters. And it's just kind of crazy that you know, 9 years ago, if you told me, yeah, Stranger Things is going to end in a movie theater, I'd be like, yeah, you're crazy. But honestly, starting off with just the experience, like I really loved the build up in the beginning of the movie from, right off the bat, but I just felt
Yeah, I
like there was
mean,
a,
I
a
will
lot
say
of issues.
you're saying movie, which is great, but yeah, I will say
Oh yeah.
I've seen the episode twice at this point too. I think the momentum in the beginning, was much needed.
Yeah.
And but it sucks to say that that also hurts the episode because the first half does kind of run too fast. Where I think 15 to 20 extra minutes tacked onto this episode to the beginning of it, especially to Henry and Vecna, like adding more depth to him and also what he's been doing, his motivations, all that just kind of felt rushed to me. Especially him explaining, him and Will's conversation explaining, that he chose to, partner with the Mind Flayer. They aren't really, he's not being controlled. It's his choice. There should have been more focus on that.
Yeah.
There should have been more focus on, even him and Eleven talking. And also, I really like that Joyce kills him, but there should have been a setup to get to that with, maybe them interacting once this season besides him just tossing her aside. I think they should have talked or something, or at least Joyce talked about, the trauma that she'd experienced because of him. It just all feels a little rushed with what they're trying to do, especially in the first half of the episode.
Agreed. And I feel like a lot of things were rushed in this. I just want to say the little things that I thought were rushed, and then I really want to talk about the fight because I think there was a lot rushed there. But I feel like there was minor details that kind of are major in this, episode. I mean, you have Max getting caught. I mean, what happens with that, and then they just end up somewhere else. Like, obviously, the military does capture them, they bring them to the base, but it's like, I feel like there's got to be some dialogue, especially since one of the military soldiers literally says, oh, the kids left their homework out, and they have all this stuff mapped out, the plans. I feel like you can't, especially with how big of an antagonist Kay was in this, why are we breezing over her in that scene? I feel
Yeah.
like there,
She
that,
didn't really
that
offer much this season other than like walking around and like looking intimidating.
Yeah, in the beginning of it, she definitely did more, but towards the end, especially this episode and that scene, it's like, how are you not like impressed that this stuff's over your head? Like you don't really know what's going on. You're trying to weaponize these kids, but this whole other thing is going on, and you're kind of just ignoring it. You know what I mean? And just it's not there. And then even at the end, when they get captured by the military and we time jump, like how are they getting away and
Yeah.
being let free? Like they
Yeah, there's
committed.
definitely details that they just brush over in this. Like Hopper and Nancy killed many of those soldiers.
Well, not even that. Murray too. Those are
Yeah, Murray.
crimes. Like, let's be real here. They should not be getting away with that. But also, like, how is there no like at least an interrogation scene or something to see why they get let go? Because they did more than violate the law. You intervened with government affairs. As much as we didn't agree with them, the law would be the law at the end of the day. Like theoretically speaking.
Oh yeah, no doubt. I mean, there's a lot of details that they kind of brush over in this. Like, first of all, where are all the Demogorgons? why are there no monsters in Dimension X? Like it's not what I imagined or envisioned for the episode because I assumed we'd at least see a lot of Demodogs, a lot of Demogorgons like fighting our main
Demobats.
cast, and we get none of that. Also, a huge detail that is just not talked about really is there's 10 to 20 pregnant women in the Upside Down that are just, I guess, killed by the explosion at the end. Like, they didn't really care to, look much into that, but that was established early on in this season that Kay was experimenting with pregnant women in the Upside Down, and I guess they were just cool with killing them. As messed up as that is, though, like in defense of that, like what 11 wanted to do was put an end to what the government was doing. So like they probably looked at it that way. It's interesting that they don't really talk about it though. Yeah. No.
There's a lot they brush over. I just still think that the whole them getting captured and brushing over it, I still think was just asinine to me because they killed a lot of people and they did a lot. They broke the law so many times, and I just feel like not that it wouldn't be bad that they had the happy ending they did, but how do you just breeze over that? Like, I feel like they should have done something with that and then time jump. You know what I mean? Explain that a little bit. Like, you just leave the military. Like, that's crazy for me to just ignore that.
I think we're all in agreement that they rushed over the major storylines of this season, which was the military and Dimension X and Upside Down with Vecna. Like, I don't understand why this couldn't have had an extra. They should have made this the longest episode of the series.
It should have
go out like the last, the fact that it's beat by the season 4 finale, like it's not an issue, but knowing that they like feeling that like, oh, there should have been more to this. It's like, oh yeah, it could have been 2.5 to even 3 hours, like possibly. Like there's a lot of stuff they had to delve into. But in the end of the day, I want to talk about some positives.
I want to talk about the fight being rushed. As much as it looked good.
Well, yeah, but a positive I do want to mention, even before we talk about other criticisms, is that at least they were able to bring everything together, especially when you're dealing with like original concepts like this. Yeah. Like in the end of the day, I still do very much like the lore of Vecna and the Mind Flayer. But saying that, we can delve into how they did the fight with them, which, visually it had some interesting and some cool moments there, but the execution of it, I think we all agree, was a little lackluster.
No, 100%. And my biggest issue is I have nothing against that. Like, we have civilians fighting something, but the Mind Flayer is this very strong entity, right?
Yeah.
It has been shown throughout the show what it can do, really not knowing what it can't do also. We've seen a lot with it, and I feel like it got beaten so easy, and it's like, this thing caused so many issues, so much death, so much chaos. I mean, it's a part of the whole plot of the show.
I think the season 3 fight against it was longer.
Yeah, and honestly, just seeing how, like, no diss at Harrington and Dustin, but just they're going underneath him and stabbing him like crazy.
Couldn't you just crush him in like 2 seconds?
The flamethrower. Like, I'm just shocked it didn't just crush him, go on top. Honestly, that's what was going to happen. I'm like, wow, we're going to get a brutal death for both of them right here.
You could just tell that all these characters are safe the whole time. It's just the vibe that they create.
Yeah, I think you have to watch this episode, and I honestly, I'm not even trying to say like I knew this, I knew that. Like, I went into this episode knowing they weren't going to kill anyone. Like
didn't they say there was going to be?
They're not. Even with all the fake outs, bro. Like that they're not going to kill these characters in that manner. So there's no feeling of actual stakes in that regard. When Steve almost fell, when 11 gets shot by Hopper, like
Nancy,
they're not going to go out that way. So like, there just isn't any feeling of actual stake there.
Yeah, they established like early on in the show, especially with the amount of fake outs that Hopper got. It's just like they're kind of untouchable, these characters. Like, they can't get killed, especially in that way, where it's just like, oh, out of nowhere, they're going to die. Like, that's not going to happen. But, like I was saying before, it is kind of in true 80s fashion. Like, they really are just, like, I guess kind of hearkening back to those kind of films where, like, the main characters just, they're not getting beat by any of the villains.
Yeah. And honestly, to credit of the Duffer Brothers, like, a lot of people gave them criticisms for this, but they said, like, we're not going to really kill anyone off like that because that's what we've never done anything like that. And that's fair. There's been some brutal deaths in this series, but none of the main characters, and like since season 2, this has been a thing. Like, a lot of the side characters go out in pretty gruesome ways. But no, we've never seen a main character actually like bite the bullet in an intense fashion in this show. And clearly by the end of this season, we had like 20 characters. They didn't want to do that. It was just clear they did not feel that they had to do it even. But, with that being said, I think that they knew that by the epilogue of this, they needed to get to satisfying send-offs. And I think we're all in agreement that for the most part, like, most of the characters actually got like a decent emotional send-off without people dying. So I'll give the Duffers credit. They were able to at least make an emotional send-off for us being, so many people criticizing them for not having, I guess the grit to out characters in this series. In the end of the day, this was always a show about kids growing up. And you're right, Dylan. I think them hearkening back to that by the end shot, the closing of this series, reminding you why you really love this show, the themes that really resonated with everyone to make this the biggest show of all time. There's no denying that this was the biggest series ever made. And I think that, for them to stumble in this last season, I'm happy to say that at least they were able to find their way by the end of it.
Yeah. And the other thing I want to talk about is it really reminds you, like, the relationships throughout the show, like, why we, like you said, like, the whole plot, everything reminds you of everything, but I really liked seeing them as kids and then now. Like, it makes you just realize, like, as much as we got to watch them grow up, like, we kind of forgot that we grew up with them side by side throughout this entire
we grew up
journey.
along with them.
I was 15 when this first came out, or 14, whatever, and I'm 24 now, and I look at it, I'm like, I remembered myself, like, at the time period of all these scenes they were showing, and I'm like, wow, like, I grew up, they grew up, and I mean, they're my age, and it's just crazy to think, like, it made it so much more emotional. It really just made, it pulled at the heartstring, especially when you got to see Eleven die. And I think that's why her death was so memorable. And I'm going to talk about grief because grief is throughout this entire show. And I want to talk about Mike's theory and how I think that is dealing with grief. So Hopper's dealt with a lot of loss. It's obvious, and back in that time period, not a lot of people focused on grief and what it was and this and that. And it's a lot of people in that time period dealt with it in very poor ways, right? And Hopper's shown that, whether it was smoking, whether it was kind of just trying to be the macho man, whatever. And when he sees Mike before graduation, they're talking about, Elwyn, why don't you skip this and that. Fast forward to when they're playing D&D, and Mike's kind of just sending everybody off in his own way, and he talks about Elle. And they make you think she's alive for a second. But, I know it's more for everyone to interpret, but I really think Elle isn't alive because a lot of that doesn't make sense with how everyone interacted and how everyone acted post-death. Because if she was really alive, I feel like it'd be different. It'd be more hopeful and like, oh, she's out there, this and that.
Yes.
Like, she's clearly dead, and it's a poor way of just coping that she's still in the story with them.
Well, I wouldn't say clearly. I think there's some ambiguity to it because Mike has some sort of realization clearly where he's like maybe, but I kind of like the ambiguity to it. Like I like that it's not just Eleven's alive. She's 100% out there. It's more, it is a way for Mike to cope with her death. Yeah. And I actually thought it was really well handled.
No, I agree.
I don't think it was a poor man's, excuse, like, way of, like, explaining things. Because, I mean, in that regard, say, like, she is completely dead. And this was Mike telling the group, a story to make them, optimistic about Elle's fate. It goes, hand in hand with what she was telling him before she, died. And I do like how you can interpret it a bunch of different ways, like Dylan's saying. Because there's a bunch of details there that support both sides. The fact that she could be dead and the fact that she could very well be alive. Her nose isn't bleeding after she talks to Mike. How did she even talk to Mike in the first place if her powers were dampened? There's a lot of details.
Well, to that theory, if she if Kali created an illusion, her nose wouldn't be bleeding. She would be, she used her powers with Mike, but that's because she was already out of the vicinity, wasn't getting affected by the kryptonite or those machines, and she was still able to use her powers to lock in with Mike. And what Mike said, he's like, she had to convince even her closest friends, including him, that she truly was sacrificing herself there. Because in Eleven's, you see it this season, honestly, in Eleven's thoughts, she full-heartedly believes that if she is with her friends, they will always be in danger. She will always be a danger to them, and she will be a danger to herself even, because they'll never stop looking for her if they know she's alive. And you really can take it either way, and I'd much prefer this ambiguous, maybe she's alive, maybe she's not. I really hope they never continue this. I think it's a solid ending. It's a really good ending. It's like, if you look at 11 as representing their childhood and the magical, magic of childhood, her leaving is them finally growing up. It's truly what the show was about.
I mean, and you said that perfectly because that's really what the final scene of the show is saying. It doesn't even matter exactly. Like, I mean, I hope we never find out. You're right, because it doesn't really matter if she is or if she isn't alive. She's out of their lives now, like 100%. Like, they're never gonna see her again. That's the feeling you should get. You can interpret, if she's alive or not. But yeah, you're right. It's her leaving is pretty much, a standing for them. Yeah, growing up. And that last D&D game that they play, represents that too. It has that. I mean, it really is a passing of the torch moment where, Holly and all of her friends come down. Mike gives them a look, and then it's really much him also accepting that his childhood is over. It really was, a beautiful end to the series. I don't think this was. I think my thoughts exactly on the finale was, an okay finale to a, lackluster season, but, a season that still had a lot of highs because this is a series that always just has, I guess, social media and, everyone, in a chokehold when it comes out. It's so popular and it's really unprecedented exactly how popular it is. I mean, it's the most popular show of all time. And I think that, we saw how harsh the reactions to Volume 2 got, and now we're seeing the reactions to this. I'm happy to report that, I think people were just a little too harsh on Volume 2 because even though that they stumbled a little bit in the penultimate episode, I think this episode clearly just, again, it showed you just why you love the series. And that's what the finale needed to do. And we were saying, in our prior videos that the finale had so much heavy lifting to do and all that. I'm happy to say it did most of that heavy lifting.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I do agree with that. I think. Yeah, go ahead, Brandon.
I was gonna say, with the finale, I know it was underwhelming his death, but I do want to highlight something that I thought at least exceeded my expectations, and that really was Vecna and Henry throughout this entire episode. So, leading up to the battle, just the fact that we haven't seen him, do anything really physical, or honestly even mentally with somebody that's not involved with his plans in a sort of way. Like, you've seen him kill his victims and go into their heads. You've seen him with Max. You've seen him with Will. But seeing him go after Hopper to me is like, this is land we haven't explored really that much with this character.
I was confused why he wasn't doing this stuff earlier in the season.
I just think they weren't as important to him. I think he wanted to, he's talked about manipulation and we've seen it, but I think, like you said, kids are easier to manipulate. He finally found an adult that was easy to manipulate because he went into Eleven's mind. He saw the fear. He saw everything, which is why he went after Hopper, which is why he got him to shoot the tank and get her out of it. I mean, that's how I took it, at least, is he finally found an adult that was worth manipulating. It was easy enough, and it worked. It worked in his hand, and I liked that a lot. I like seeing that he branched out to something that was kind of not unethical, but just not normal for that character. And it's especially since it's a villain, I was happy to see that, and I liked seeing him overcome his fear. Even though he's a villain, you don't want to see him win. I did enjoy seeing him chase after Holly and actually go through the cave and see him struggle. I mean, that was awesome, and I'm very happy.
It really is. It's funny.
Great
because,
acting for that.
Yeah, no, Holly, great acting from the young actress that played Holly. I really thought all of her stuff this season was handled really well. It's just we got a lot of it. Like she was in a substantial bit of this series when I really thought, and this episode kind of proves it, our main characters should have been the forefront, especially Finn Wolfhard as Mike. This episode reminded me how important he is to this series. He was genuinely the central figure of season 1. Him and Joyce and Hopper were kind of the three main characters of that season. And maybe Nancy a little bit too, but I really think Finn Wolfhard was amazing in that first season of this show. And he proved himself very early on. And it's confusing to me that they didn't utilize him nearly as much as they could have, especially in this season.
It's my same point with Joyce. Like, I really feel like her and Mike, were like the main characters of season 1. Like Winona Ryder, it was such a great comeback for her, and like she gave literally like an Emmy-worthy performance season 1 of this show, and then her progression in this series, they just dumbed her character down like slower and like it happens slowly because season 2 there's definitely remnants of 1. And, you know, her storyline isn't terrible in 3 and 4 with Hopper and all that. But you could tell they just dumbed down her character to the point where this season, she didn't have really anything to do. And then out of nowhere, they just give her the climactic moment with Vecna. Like, it's a good moment, but it's weird when you don't have more setup with it. Yeah, everyone, you know, was thinking about their trauma that he, you know, had induced to them. And, yeah, Joyce would probably, you know, take the cake for someone who's experienced a lot of hardship from him. You know, her son was taken with season 1, revolves all around her trauma. But we should have been reminded of that instead of her just reaffirming Will the entire season. And that was really all she did until she does this huge moment that I did like, but again, it just needed more sauce.
Yeah, and no diss at Winona Ryder or Noah Schnapp, but I don't know if it's how they wrote it, but it felt like almost the writing, like the dialogue that they were supposed to be saying versus the tone of their voice, it felt like sometimes it didn't match in the episode or even the season, matter of fact. Like it just sometimes it didn't mesh well, and it just the certain words or certain lines specifically from the two of them stood out. Negative.
The lobotomy of Joyce Byers needs to be studied because, yeah, I just don't understand how her performance got so bizarre. Like, it's genuinely just, I'm sorry to say, it just wasn't a good performance from Winona.
Yeah, she was often commanding the scenes in this series before, and I think
They made
even
her a babysitter essentially too.
yeah, like she really doesn't have much to do in this season, and you know that even that last scene with her and Hopper, it just feels like Hopper is kind of the central character, and she's just kind of there, like kind of just floating in, kind of doing her thing. Like it's a good send off for both of those characters, but like she doesn't say really much of value in that scene. It's kind of just like this is where they're going to end off, and that's really it. Like
Yeah,
I honestly thought the ending of Mrs. Wheeler in this episode was kind of better than how they handled Joyce.
Yeah.
That final scene with Joyce, like, I don't know. It is good. It's a good place for them to end up. But yeah, I just feel like it is Hopper kind of commanding that scene.
And Montauk is where they were supposed to originally have the location of this.
Yeah, I do like the Montauk shout out because the series was originally supposed to be titled Montauk and take place, you know, in that town. But I think that it's a good send off for them, and the next scene is like even, you know, more powerful because it's the final end, and we've talked about that. It's a great send off for the kids.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that overall, you know, the episode, it leaves you feeling, you know, bittersweet. Because, you know, as well as the ending with Joyce and Hopper and the kids, you get the ending with the more young adults, you know, Nancy, Steve, Jonathan, and Robin. Which, you know, a scene, you know, that I feel, it hits close to home for us, you know, it's particularly in our time and in our lives currently. And a lot of people, you know, similar in age to us, it's a bittersweet end to them. And, you know, they're making this promise to, you know, see each other, you know, every month. And, you know, that might not happen, but it's really that, you know, it's really just the remaining, you know, young naivety that they have, thinking they could, you know, see each other still. But I think deep down they know that, you know, things are changed. It'll never be the same.
Yeah, there's that lingering feeling where they all know, like, maybe this won't actually be how things play out. They're going to go off and do their own things, and that's life. It really harkens back to the simplicity of kind of what, you know, the core themes of this show, which is growing up and moving on. Yeah. And I really think well handled. It's a shame that the first half of this episode was so rushed because they took their time with this epilogue. This is a solid epilogue that really shows you where all these characters are going to be led off, especially our main characters, from everyone down from Mike to Steve. You understand where they're going to be for potentially the rest of their lives. It's actually very clear. And I thought most of them actually have really satisfying wrap-ups.
Yeah, no, we talked about in our last Stranger Things video where, yeah, there were so many characters to balance. Like, could they, you know, really conclude everyone's story in a satisfying manner? I'd say, you know, for what they did, it was pretty satisfying. And, you know, listen, there weren't a lot of deaths. I don't think it by the time we got here to this episode, I just knew there wasn't gonna be. So like Callie and 11, you know, it definitely is a good stamp on the end of that story. You know, for me being concerned with Callie saying we got to kill ourselves, all that, I think the way they executed it was pretty gripping.
Yeah, I was worried at first because it seemed like the cookie cutter, just, you know, she's gonna sacrifice herself for her friends. But then everything with Mike and the way that he told his story at the end made me really rethink it and just it was actually really satisfying. I'm happy. I'm happy that they actually did something interesting with the writing here, where it wasn't just like, no, Eleven's alive. No, you really can take it either way. It's, Mike holding on to hope that his friend is out there. All their friends, said she's out there, she's alive. But it's also for them too, for them to be able to move on and finally accept. They went through a lot of hardship in this show, but they were able to grow up together, like officially.
You're right, because you could look at this ending with Mike in so many different ways. You're like, yeah, he could be just doing this for his friends. What it's really in line with what Hopper told him earlier in the episode. Mm-hmm. And you could look at it as another way. He does have a moment during the graduation where he sees the speakers, and it makes him think about the power dampening speakers that they used on 11 and Kali. And it's like, it's either, is he realizing the story he could tell his friends, or is he realizing that 11 could be alive?
I think it was just PTSD to that night, because
it's definitely something to do with him, like the story, because he's realizing the speakers. I think that's a moment of realization for him, at least in some regard, to either I can swing it this way, or oh wow, like she might actually be alive.
I truthfully think through Finn Wolfhard's acting, though, especially in the final scene,
I disagree.
I think it's real. What do you disagree with?
I really think, just based off the acting and what we've seen, and just not even just this, but other movies and shows, and just how he acted and looked, he didn't smile, nothing. I looked like he was just having PTSD to that night, because the whole point of,
I think that's what they want it to seem like at the beginning. But then it's clear at the end of the series that he is. I felt it, at least personally, through Finn Wolfhard's acting, that he has fully accepted what happened. This isn't Mike holding on to hope that 11's alive and he'll one day see her again. It's him holding on to hope that potentially she could have lived and actually lived out a happy life, so he can move on, so his friends can move on.
Okay, that's what you meant. I thought you were saying in general just that his theory might be real. I just think it was more of just PTSD to that night, because the whole point of his talk with Hopper was to go. She would want you to go walk. She would want you to go this. She wouldn't want him to hold back. So him being there is, he's supposed to have his mind off of this. Dustin has his whole big speech that's supposed to, and you see everyone's like facial expressions. They're happy. His mind is easily drifted away from it. He's not thinking about it. But it came back and almost haunted him that night.
But I think Dylan's right, where I think it was put there to kind of make you think that. And then once you get to that story, you realize it was a moment of realization, because following, this moment where he looks at the speakers, he does approach Dustin still. They have a nice moment with the core group of boys right after, and the moment with, Stacy. So that, you could look at it in a bunch of different ways.
Yeah, I fully, at least what it made me feel, is that is Mike's beginning to accept what happened. Regardless if 11's alive or not, it's his way to cope as a storyteller. That it's his way to help his friends move on too, because they were all so deeply affected by it, and they were all really good friends with 11. And I really thought that it was just a really well written scene at the end, because it's something that they haven't really done before, where it's like an ambiguous kind of thing. Everything's been very clear cut, I think, in this show. Even in season 1, back when 11 was hinted at being alive, it was kind of clear, like, yeah, she's alive. It wasn't like, because Hopper's leaving Eggos in the woods. Now it's like, you get that scene with 11, going to a random town with the 3 waterfalls, but it's just that. It seems like a fantasy. It seems too good to be true. So you don't really know. It's not as clear.
Yeah, because you could look at it in a way, too, where it's like either this could be exactly what Mike wants to picture in his head, exactly like the story he laid out for them, that he called childish himself, or it could be, the fact that 11 still very much being, childlike, and having that mindset that the boys instilled in her. Maybe she really did listen to him. It's, it's up for you to interpret. And yeah, I think I was most happy with them leaving it ambiguous, because, yeah, like, so many people have come at the Duffers for their lack of, killing people off and all this. But, yeah, this ending that kind of gives you so much of, I guess it kind of went and showed you, like, their actual strengths in a way. They were able to remind you why you love this show because of the character dynamics, the relationships that they built, and they remind you why they haven't really killed anyone off because they never really found a way. Because of how people die pretty cruelly in the show, they never really found a reason to do it to these people, I guess. And you could mount that up to them just being scared to do it as well. But you can't deny that people get definitely rocked in this series. I don't think they wanted to do that to any of these characters.
Yeah.
Especially the kids. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want anyone to die because obviously my opinion on this is after volume 2 and like how I'm like, okay, the feedback of this is awful. I'm like, I really hope they don't kill off somebody like anybody because I'm like, I think it's gonna, especially in 2 hours running time. Like, I don't know if they're gonna wrap everything up properly, and there's gonna be some plot holes. I just really hope they don't do something that's gonna give them bigger backlash, and they're probably already gonna get.
Well, I will also say in defense of Volume 2, it definitely was not as bad as a lot of people were saying, and like a lot of people did love it still. There were a
wasn't as
lot of
bad.
moments in Volume 2 that did show us why we love the series too. I think all the Dustin and Steve stuff has been very strong this entire season.
Oh, I enjoyed it a lot. I agree with you, and like, yeah, it's not as bad as what people said, but the issue I thought it was bad was there was a lot of things that like left you to the point where it's like you have to wrap up so much in 2 hours. How are you really going to do that in the final
Yeah.
episode?
Well,
And
I think
that's why
how
I
they
said-
approached doing it was just making it have like an emotional, bringing it back to kind of just a more personal and emotional feeling where it's like it's not really about them defeating Vecna at the end of the day. Like obviously that's the main storyline going on, but no, it's about these kids growing up.
yeah,
That's what the show's about. Yeah, because if you look back to season 1, like a lot of the Upside Down and even the Demogorgon itself it's shrouded in so much mystery. Obviously, it's the initial season, but it's even shrouded in darkness. You don't even see all too much, especially the Upside Down. Like it's just visually brighter in this season. Like it was a mysterious place when they were first entering it, when they didn't understand it, and that this season reflects that they can comfortably enter it because they understand it now. And Dimension X was obviously the bigger threat, which is also why I had an issue with there being no monsters in Dimension X with this episode.
Yeah.
That was just felt very off to me. But I think one thing that's very interesting also about the Dimension X and Mind Flare stuff, and I could be wrong about this, but I think this is going to potentially set up the spin-off the Duffers have mentioned. The stone that Henry touches in this episode that is barely delved into, but it is what it's the pretty much the essence of the Mind Flare that made the Mind Flare call to Henry in the first place. I think the Duffers want to explore either that exact stone or different stones, scattered, on planet Earth. I don't know if it's going to harken back to Dimension X, other dimensions, but that I think is their idea for the spin-off, where it delves into magical stones in some way, I guess, that have particles in the Mind Flare. I will say there's potential there for a series that could be vastly different from Stranger Things, but offer some really cool fantasy elements, to further, the lore of this series and Dimension X and the Upside Down.
I was trying to let you talk, Brandon. Yeah, I do.
I thought you were gonna say something, but
No, no
you
worries.
Go first. You go first. I'll go after.
Yeah, I think that could be, potential for a new series or something like that. I truthfully don't really want to spin off the Stranger Things. I think I'm shocked how much I ended up enjoying this ending. Like truthfully, it really, especially on the emotional side of it, it got me moved. Like it really moved me, especially towards the end. That final scene of them playing Dungeons and Dragons. Like obviously everyone jokes about, it's just going to be Dungeons and Dragons at the end, whatever, but I think it was handled very well, like especially Finn Wolfhard being the core character of this scene. This episode fully reminded me that they should have utilized him more this season. Like it really, it bothered me.
Yeah, and one thing I want to talk about, just because you talked about spin-offs and this and that, and like we're getting the animated show, but thank God it's not a continuation. It's more of a gap filler. And then apparently there's rumors of like a show taking place in their universe but not aligned with this. Then other people, probably going to get a Vecna prequel at this point because of the brick. And honestly, I just let the franchise be, like let it die, all jokes aside, but Yeah, I just don't want to see this franchise milked. And like you said, I'm very happy with this finale. I look back at it and I'm like, they wrapped it up the best they could have. As much as I would have wanted things to be done differently, I am satisfied. I look back at the show and I'm like, you know what? This was a great show. Like,
Yeah.
this
If
got
you
the
say this is a
popularity.
bad show, I mean, it doesn't have to be to your taste, but this is not a bad series. This is
No,
one
it's
of the,
not. And I
you know,
enjoyed it. And I loved and we talk all the time, the 80s music. Like, honestly, I was shocked that I heard The Trooper by Iron Maiden is during their graduation. Like,
yeah, them
they
using Purple
always,
Rain in this episode too.
yeah,
It's
they,
shock.
the
That's
music
never been
choice
able to be used in a TV show ever before. Any Prince songs.
and
So
the
just
pop,
hearing that was crazy.
and the pop culture references throughout the show. I mean, we saw Indiana Jones in this. We have references to all these movies. Like, they
Oh,
handle
the
it
show
so
has always
perfectly.
been the pop culture reference show.
100%. And the biggest thing with it is, and I always, even in this season, a lot of people say, "Oh, it didn't feel like the '80s. It didn't feel like the '80s." But like, really, it did. It would bring you back those moments, and I think the ending really made you feel like, wow, this really is a show that takes place in the '80s. Like, it brought that vibe back that I thought it was kind of lacking at times throughout this season, and I'm happy that we got it back because that's what.
Yeah, but even in
everyone loved
season
about it.
one, like the '80s stuff was always kind of a bit of a backdrop to the series. It wasn't like what the show is about. It
Oh,
just took
100%.
place
Yeah, I agree.
in the '80s. But yeah, it's always been a show that's referenced a ton of pop culture from the '80s, and I like that you brought up. I know the music in this series has always been phenomenal. Even the original stuff that they wrote for this show was great, but also yeah, the songs that they chose to include were really good, really strong.
Yeah, I mean, they've been great throughout it. There's a lot of other, creators out there that are very niche with their music or very, very educated on what to play and what to do, like especially with a specific time period like this. And they really showed they know what they were doing. And the
Yeah,
music throughout the show was just it blew me away like every episode, like getting something very not it's not niche to us or in general like
I mean, you
being
can
a very
even see
popular
just
song.
how popular certain songs got again because of the show. Like it just shows you the influence that they had. And you're right; they picked a lot of good songs throughout this series.
I mean, you guys know I'm a big Metallica fan. I mean, I love rock in general, but like Master of Puppets, like Eddie playing that, when I saw that for the first time, I mean, I had the whole world by the throat. Not even the song, but
So
that scene
iconic.
specifically. And people forget like what he learned to play it. It sounded great. And like yeah, the version's different than actually Metallica's, but it sounds amazing also. So it's cool that they kind of remastered a song like on their own if you kind of think about it because it does sound a little bit different. It's a different guitar tuned differently, but it just the song choices throughout the show is awesome. It's really sad to think that like yeah, this is done after 9 years already.
It is it's sad knowing we won't have another moment like this. This has been 5 seasons where every single that time a season comes out, it's a cultural moment. Even the first one, it caught on pretty fast. That summer of 2016, like the show just blew up, and it caught everyone off guard. And I feel like you've
Changed the
seen the
streaming
show
world.
transform, in ways that a lot of people didn't love. A lot of people think that it should only been one season, but I think every season how it's been able to grip, just society, like it shows you why this series was so worthwhile. And I'm so happy that by the end of it, they could bring it back to the at least core messaging that made us fall in love with season one.
Yeah, and really it makes you realize at the end of it too if you've been a fan enough, long enough to watch a show and grow with the characters, but it makes you realize like this show really changed the streaming and television world for a reason. Like
Oh yeah,
really,
for
really
better or
did.
for worse, this has dictated how TV is even made nowadays.
It did, and it shows you why. I mean, look at the quality of it, like over time, like CGI wise. One thing I just want to say, I'm disappointed about. 'Cause speaking of CGI, is like I really thought we would get something a little bit more with the Demogorgons, like
Yeah, as we've been
origin.
saying, where were the
You know,
Demogorgons?
some
It's so
origin, a
weird.
little bit, like just the mind flare. Like we're told that this was this wormhole and all this stuff, but I feel like there's so much more to it, and that's where
Yeah,
I feel like they might milk that for a show. Which, if it's done correctly,
yeah.
go for it because I feel like that's not a bad thing to explain that, I guess. But after that, then just leave it. But knowing
Yeah.
Netflix and how they do things, it'll get milked.
I do think conceptually the Mind Flare stuff was very cool. Like the fact that he was like in the Mind Flare this whole season and then it just like turns into a giant kaiju. It is cool. But I would have much rather preferred a bunch of Demogorgons or just like a fight like that, as opposed to them dodging a 500-foot monster and the plot armor being off the wazoo.
Yeah, I thought Dustin was gonna get cooked right
I
then.
felt
I'm
like
oh,
they should have had like an army of Demogorgons chasing the main cast, and like 11 stops the entire army.
yeah.
Like that could have been like a cool way to like. It's still like her saving them, but like that would have been a pretty crazy moment to at
I
least
would
show
like to
like the
see-
monsters are still controlled and there by part of the the hive mind that they've talked about all season. So it's
Yeah, and I would have liked to have seen Dustin kill a Demobat. I really would have liked to have seen that for
especially
him with Eddie.
I will say they rushed through the lore with, as we said, with the Mind Flayer with Vecna. If they do this spinoff, I'm sure they're going to delve into more of it. But yeah, you're right. I don't want them to milk this franchise. So
It's
I
gotta
will
stay
say they
special.
left us in a good place, and it's a bittersweet feeling that it's over. We're not going to get another Stranger Things drop, but I think we're all feeling like a part of our childhood has ended, and it has given us this bittersweet feeling that yeah, we grew up with them.
Yeah, so we've all grown up with this show for essentially the better part of a decade here. I am happy that they were able to, bring it back to the core themes and values that the show was based off of, especially in season 1. Really got those vibes at the end when they were playing D&D. And overall, I'm pretty satisfied. I'm happy where the show left off.
Yeah, I agree. And honestly, with if you want to count Stranger Things as horror, like you can, but I definitely would talk about having
Oh, it
kids
definitely
as
is.
that. Yeah, it definitely is. But we just had It Welcome to Dairy. If I were to compare 2 seasons, like I'm not going to go in depth. Obviously, as a whole series, there's more leverage. But if we're going season for season, I really think It Welcome to Dairy outshined Stranger Things. But seeing the evolution, I'd say, of a very more horror based like It Welcome to Dairy versus Stranger Things, I think there's a great future and endless possibilities now for horror TV. And I do like the idea of this youth with kids having to deal with extraterrestrial beings
Yeah.
or
It's a good
godlike
point you're making
complexes.
because I really think It Welcome to Derry. I mean, the It movies themselves were heavily inspired by Stranger Things.
Yeah.
We are going to see a lot of things that are trying to replicate it. Just like when a bunch of shows come out, when Breaking Bad came out, there were a lot of shows that were trying to recapture that vibe. But at the end of the day, there's only one Stranger Things,
Yeah.
and I'm happy to say that at least for me, I was somewhat satisfied with the ending. But what did you guys think? Did you like the ending to Stranger Things? What did you think about Stranger Things season 5? Are you excited for a potential spinoff? We'll catch you guys on the next episode.